What's up, guys? Today I want to take you on a photo walk with me to Bainbridge Island in Seattle, and also go to some coffee shops, get some katsu curry because you gotta eat good, and also show you some of my shots that I took in Pike Place and Pioneer Square. So just a little background on this day. This was back in June. It was a drizzly, rainy day, and I had a friend coming to town. I knew that I wanted to be outside and taking photos, but I wasn't quite sure what. And then my wife suggested that I take the Bainbridge Island ferry, which is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And it's also just like the perfect thing to do on a moody, drizzly day. If you've seen some of my past work, I love taking photos on the ferry, and especially when it's cloudy, I feel like I get some really moody results. So that was kind of the idea for this photo walk. Before diving into the full video, I wanted to go over some of the gear that I used. So my go-to on ferries, overcast, rainy days is to shoot Portrait 800, which I did on my trusty Olympus Mu 1. In addition, I wanted to shoot a bunch of black and white film. This is something that I've been trying to do more of, and because my friend gifted me an Canon AE1 for me to mess around with, I've just been shooting a ton of black and white film in that. So that came with me, and paired it with what's become my favorite focal length through using this camera is the 28mm focal length. I am just really enjoying getting these wide shots of different scenes. I'm also trying to get closer to my subjects with the 28 because I just like how that looks, and it's a classic street look. But this camera shutter is so loud that it makes me a little nervous to do it, but in the right situations, I have no issues with it. And then for my digital, I always have my X100V on me as well. So kind of a handful of cameras there, and not my ideal to have so many cameras on me, but I like to have as many as possible and choose the best from all of them. I wanted to go over my approach to this photo walk because it's a little different when I go by myself versus with a friend or my wife or just a group. When I'm with other people, it's way more about spending time with them and not so much on getting photos. This was a little different because he was also taking photos, so we were both looking for different shots. But again, friends in town, the photos are not the priority. Food, though, is a priority. And the first place we went to is Storyville Coffee in Pike Place. While this isn't like the best coffee in Seattle, and it's definitely pricey for what it is, if you're just coming to town for like a quick trip and you're in Pike Place anyways, there's a high chance that you'll be there. It's just a really cozy and beautiful cafe with pretty good drinks. I always go for their cortado. I highly recommend it. It's just a really nice, relaxing spot. The windows out to Pike are really cool. I actually grabbed a couple photos when I was there. So after fueling up at Storyville, we decided to walk around Pike Place a little bit. I wanted to show him a couple of my shots that I pretty much go to every time I'm there. There's a couple different corners that I like to look at. There's this corner in Pike Place that if you know, you know. You probably have seen this before. When the sun is shining, it's my go-to place because you can see the waterfront and this Ferris wheel, but also you can get some really nice shadows and compositions with people there. But it's overcast, so it feels a little different here, and I like that a lot. Then we walked to the ferry terminal. We got there a little early. We still had some time, and there's a nice bridge that you can take from the ferry terminal. It'll take you down towards Pioneer Square, which is where we ended up walking to. Again, I didn't get too many shots in Pioneer Square, but I did come across this little French bulldog, I think, in a shop window that was closed and all the lights were off, but it was in the corner with the light hitting it just perfectly. And this just shows how good the Olympus Mu is. Again, I can't control any of the settings at all besides turning the flash on and off. And we were just walking by real quick, and I just stopped, took a picture real quick, and then kept going. So I'm very impressed with how it focused. Alright, so it's time to jump on the ferry. It wasn't rainy yet, it was still very overcast, and so I wanted to get a couple different photos. The first one you'll see here is me getting a picture of my friend in a booth with people walking by. After we took off, I immediately jumped up and wanted to run around and take photos. I'm kind of annoying on the ferry because I can't sit still. I have to run around everywhere and get as many pictures as I possibly can. Plus the ferry ride isn't that long versus some of the other ferries that I've gone on. So again, I wanted to maximize my time. In this first leg of the journey, I actually got some photos that I'm very happy with. So how I approach taking photos on the ferry is really all about trying to get interesting compositions, at least to me. And I try to get a mix with subjects and scenes without subjects. I think what I'm better at is getting scenes without subjects because I kind of dabble in street photography, but it's definitely different from the traditional sense. But I try to really capture is the essence of taking a ferry. It feels very cliche, but I really like shooting on a drizzly day because people are wearing their rain jackets, and that kind of obscures the subject a little bit more. The other thing you'll notice is that I use the window frames of the ferry a lot in my framing for compositions. I just naturally am gravitated towards it, and I think makes the image a lot more interesting. I try to fill in the frame like around as much as I can for all compositions, and I just think that's a lot more interesting. I also shoot a mix of inside the ferry. There's an inside portion that's all sealed off from the outside. There's an outside portion with seats that is still covered by some glass, and then there's just the fully exposed area. So I basically do laps of the ferry trying to get as many different compositions as I can. Another composition that I look for besides the windows is there are these long running lights that are perpendicular to the windows and give you a nice leading line if you can frame it right. And so I'm always looking for those, especially with the empty booth. There's just something about it that really draws me. One more note that I'll say on why I like to shoot Portrait 800 is I really like how the colors are more saturated and the greens really pop, especially on the ferry. The color scheme for the ferries here is mostly white, but with green accents, especially the railing, and Portrait 800 naturally, especially when it's overcast, it really draws out those greens. I just love the color scheme and how it turned out. I forgot to mention that the black and white roll that I was shooting was HP5. This is, I think, my first time shooting this film, and I understand why it's so hyped. It's got just a really nice grain structure, it's super flexible, and when you want to edit your pictures after, you can make them super contrasty and moody, almost like Tri-X, or you can make them super soft like other black and white films. So I actually really liked how these photos turned out. Once we got to Bainbridge Island, it actually started dumping rain like really hard, and we walked around just a little bit, but we actually were getting really hungry and needed to start making our way back because we wanted to grab dinner early. So we did a quick little tour and then jumped back on the ferry again. Pretty much the next one that showed up. So I was pretty happy with the compositions that I got on the first leg of the ferry trip with my Portrait 800. So I wanted to switch it up for the return trip and shoot on my Canon AE1 with HP5. So I was looking for kind of similar compositions to what I was taking before. I loaded another roll, Portrait 800, so I still had that going just in case I saw compositions that I also wanted in color, and I did. But one of my favorite compositions that I took from the entire trip is what you'll see is now my back screen on my computer, is this one right here. What I really like about this one, so again, I mentioned the running lights perpendicular to the window, and I'm always looking for these open booths, but I just really like how there are two subjects that are silhouetted against the windows on either side. Almost, it's not exactly symmetrical, but it's pretty close. This one is actually one of my favorite ones as well because you can see the ferry in the distance and there's just a lot going on here. But at the same time, because it's black and white and it abstracts some of the colors, it looks very minimal. So here I'm going to do a side-by-side of the shot that I took in black and white on HP5 and Portrait 800. I think I like the wider shot, and the black and white was on a 28mm versus the color is in 35. And again, this is where I'm starting to really fall in love with the 28mm focal length, because you can just get so much more detail in a scene. So this is one of the last shots that I took on the return trip and ended up being my absolute favorite of the entire trip. I wanted to get a picture of the Space Needle, ideally a ferry, and an empty booth, and the framing of the window all in one shot, and I ended up being able to do that. This is shot on Portrait 800. I also took some on my X100V, but the Portrait 800 shot is my absolute favorite one. I also took it on the Canon AE1 GP5, and I think it would have turned out really good, but issues with the light leak and the bar, I just couldn't edit around it. So it's okay if I don't get a shot like this, because I got so many good ones, but it also motivates me to want to recreate it and get the shot. And finally, the most important thing of the entire day was getting some good food. So we ended up going to Kobuda Ukami, Katsu and Sake House. I hopefully said that somewhat right. Had to end the day getting some delicious katsu. That place is top tier in terms of Seattle places. So all in all, a great photo walk, a fun day, and I hope this inspires you to get out and shoot on a ferry in Seattle, but also don't let the rain or any drizzle stop you, because I get, in my opinion, some of my best photos in those conditions. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I have so many video ideas that I'm trying to catch up on and will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or any food recommendations for Seattle. I'm always looking to try new places, and many more to come for me. Have a good one.